Welcome back, Room Riders. It's been a while since I've done a video, and since I had a couple of cancellations this morning and some reschedules, I figured I'd take a few moments and go ahead and knock out a video. I saw that both Joey Morris and Kellyanne Maddox were doing the Get to Know Your Witches tag, and it sounded like a fun thing to do, so I thought I would take a few moments and kind of do that. I also wanted to give you guys some updates as to why I've been out for so long. There's been a lot going on in terms of my private practice in speech pathology, as well as with my family. I had to take a trip to San Antonio this weekend because my mom was in the hospital last week. She wasn't doing very well, and we were concerned, so we wanted to make a trip down there to visit with them. And then when I got down there, I found that I should probably be just as worried or more worried about my father. So any positive energy and healing and so forth that you would like to send towards my mom and dad, I would appreciate it. I've not always had the best relationship with my parents, but they're still my parents, and I still owe them some honor and dignity for that. So, you know, your parents do the best they can with the tools that they have, and that's something that we need to keep in mind. Unless they're just totally, absolutely shitty. You know, my parents, I don't think, set out to be shitty. They just kind of were self-absorbed. Anyway, I'm guilty of that myself sometimes. Anyway, so the other update that I wanted to give, for those of you that do not know, I have a book coming out. It's not going to be a book for everybody. It's not really a book about me. It's kind of a book geared more towards parents. So I am also in the process of revamping and republishing the first book that I wrote, which is a children's book called Little Bitty. It is currently available on Amazon.com, and you can also follow me as an author on Amazon.com, and I would appreciate that because any support I can get is appreciated. But I wanted to reformat the book and republish it under the new Kindle Direct that they've now created. So Purple Broom Apothecary and Publishing is the full name of my company here. And so that's where you can look up books also. So that being said, I do have a second book that's in the works. I've been working on it for probably about a year now. It's going a lot slower than anticipated, and a lot of it's just in the editing and getting it formatted properly for the publishing. I had to wait on some permissions for some illustrations that I'm using and that sort of thing in the book, and I needed to contact a few people to get their permission and make some thanks, and then I realized that I had put those acknowledgments into the book already, but for some reason it's not showing up on the manuscript, so don't know what's going on with that, but anyhow. So, down to the Witchy tag. Joey Morris and Kellyanne Maddox were tagged in a Get to Know Your Witches Witchy tag. It's 15 questions, sounded like fun, so I thought I'd go ahead and take a moment to kind of share some of these, simply because I've done a lot of tag videos through the years about get to know you and questions about you, but I liked this one because the questions in this tag were unique. They were not ones that I'd heard asked before in other tag videos, so I'm going to try to tag some of the old school witches in this video and see if we can get a response. The first question is, does your sun sign, zodiac sign, portray you correctly? This is kind of a tricky question for me because I'm actually on the cusp between Cancer and Leo, and I do exhibit traits of both Cancer and Leo. However, there's certain characteristics about my personality that don't seem to fit either, and I couldn't really figure that out when I was younger. Now that I'm older and I'm more educated, I still don't know a lot about astrology as much as I should, really, for practice, but I'm in the process of learning. I got a great book from Ori's Oasis. She recommended the book, and so I bought it, and I've been kind of trying to learn a little bit more about that, and it turns out that my rising sign is Aries, which explains a whole lot. So I do feel that the characteristics that embody both Cancers and some of the Leo are very much me. I'm very much a homebody, but I'm also I put on a show. I feel like I'm always on a stage acting for people because I don't like people to see what I'm really like on the inside. I don't always like myself, and I was bullied a lot as a kid, so I learned to kind of hide a lot of my emotions through a showmanship kind of thing, if that makes any sense at all. The best example I can give you is that when I was a kid, my mom and my grandmother made a lot of my clothing, and while everybody was wearing Jordache jeans, I was having to wear Garanimals because my mother said I was too rough on jeans. Garanimals. For those of you that don't know what Garanimals are, look them up. But in any case, there was a point where my mom was buying me these floor-length skirts with fitted tops that looked like something out of Little House on the Prairie, and I had pantaloons and petticoats. And I'm not kidding. So, including hobnail boots. I had a pair of white hobnail boots. So, people at school were kind of making fun of me. So, I got to the point where I just sort of tied up the skirt, kind of unbuttoned it a little bit because it buttoned all the way down the front. And so, the petticoat kind of showed underneath. And I put on tons of bangle bracelets and a bandana. And that's where I learned to read. I started really reading tarot cards. I had received a deck right around that same time from someone. If you're not familiar with that story, go back and watch some of the other videos on my channel and on Witches of the Moon. I talk about that. But it definitely, that showmanship got me through a lot of the bullying that flicked on the raw. So I do feel that my sun signs kind of identify me pretty well, but my rising sign definitely answers a few personality characteristics that I couldn't quite get. All right, number 2, what songs bring you the most magical vibes? Joey Morris hit a great one. Fabulous. She mentioned Return to Innocence by Enigma, and yes, that one's a great one. If you want to talk about first kind of connecting on a musical level to a spiritual plane, that song was definitely one of the ones that did it for me. There's also a song by Aha. It's A Living a Boy's Adventure Tale. That song from the very first vocal just reached out and grabbed me. I was always an Aha fan. They're my favorite band to this day. But that song just went right to the core of my soul, and I'm not even really sure why. But in terms of recently, like, connecting to the witchy side of my spirituality, not just reaching out for a spiritual dimension, 5th dimension and beyond, I would say a lot of Dave the Bard's music has done that for me. The first song that I heard that really reached out to me in terms of spirituality recently was on one of Lady Gravedancer's videos. She was using it as her intro music, and it was Cauldron Born by Dave the Bard, and that just had me. I was like, this is it. This is so it. This is it. And so that, a lot of his music, some of The Voice by Celtic Women, their version of The Voice, that song is like my ancestors talking to me through the years. It's just, and although this woman is a Catholic artist, there is a song, there's a lady, oh God, I'm trying to think of her name now. Oh, I can't think of her name. If I can think of it, I'll put it in the down bar. She is a Catholic artist, and she had a song that I was in a really rough period with my husband, and I was cleaning house, and I was listening to her CD, and the CD ended, and after a pause, this other song started up, and it was her, and it's called Be Still. And that song just was like balm to my soul at the time. It really, even now, if I listen to it, it makes me cry. It really spoke to me on a very spiritual level, and was just really what I needed to hear at the time. But it didn't show up on the album list, on the song list, so I actually wrote her about it because I was like, I need to know the name of the song. She knew immediately what I was talking about. She's like, yeah, it got messed up when we published the album and it wasn't listed. It should have been listed as a 13th track. But that song really, really did it for me. Nancy Kerrigan, no, not Nancy Kerrigan, she's a skater. Carrick. Her name is Carrick. Carrick, and I think it's Karen or Kathy Carrick. Karen, something like that. I don't know. Anyway, that song really did it for me. Let's see. Which one of your deities, guides, or ancestors is most sarcastic with you? If this doesn't apply to you, which of your tarot or oracle decks is? Okay. I presume from the videos I have watched that people are kind of giving you both. I work with the Morrigan. Sarcasm is a daily language. She likes to kick you in the ass. The deck for me that's been the most in your face has been the Spirit Keeper's Tarot by Bennabelle Wen. This deck, I've heard people describe it as being dark. I don't really think it's dark. She did a nice melding of the esoteric system of Crowley and the traditional Rider-Waite kind of system. And it's an interesting deck because I find that it often tells me answers I don't want to hear, which is, funny because my husband tells me that, oh, you can read whatever you want with cards. No, the cards have meanings. Okay, there's things in the cards that are going to give you responses to what you're asking. And this deck really gives me things that sometimes I don't want to know or hear. And so I have found that that's the big one. But for me, the Morrigan, she kicks me in the ass almost daily. So, I saw a t-shirt the other day that a lady was wearing that I absolutely needed to have, and it says, I find your lack of sarcasm disturbing. That would be perfect. Plus sarcasm is a language in my household. And being in the South, one of the things, sarcasm is kind of a daily thing. We're used to it here. Because for those of you that weren't raised in the South, I'll tell you there are two things that are important in the South: hospitality and manners. Our mamas taught us, if you ain't got nothing nice to say, don't say nothing at all. And so we've come up with really nice ways to say ugly things to your face, like, oh, bless your heart. If we say it to you like that, what we're really saying is, you big dumbass. So sarcasm is kind of a thing in the South. It's sort of a spoken language here. All right. Biggest witchy mess up or misinterpretation? Oh, there have been so many. Mistakes. It's how we learn. Well, I think for me personally, my biggest misinterpretations come anytime my husband asks me to do a reading for him. I really don't like to read for people whom I know very well. One moment. Sorry about that. Okay, so anytime my husband asks me to do a reading for him, I hate it. I absolutely hate it. Number one, because he wants me to do it right then and there. And so I don't have time to get into my zone, so to speak. I like to prepare for a reading in terms of I like to meditate. I like to cleanse my mind. I don't want my reading to be influenced by things that are currently on my mind. So I like to cleanse it. I like to have a space established and do a reading. And I also hate doing readings for people that I know very well, because I always kind of doubt myself in terms of, am I reading into what I want to see because I know this person, or am I being influenced by things that I know about them? And so, it's not that I don't give an accurate reading either way, but sometimes what I see doesn't apply at that exact moment either. And so, he's one of those people that he thinks all this witchcraft is bullshit. And he gives me a very hard time about it all the time. So he'll ask me to do a reading, and I feel like he's being sarcastic, but he really expects me to do it. So then he doesn't like the results, especially if it's not what he wants to hear. And it puts me under immense pressure, and I don't like that. So I often misinterpret his readings. And I don't know if that's by design or what's the scoop with that, but I don't like it. And so often I have a lot of those misinterpretations. Also, anytime I try to do magic for myself, for something I personally want, I find that it rarely comes to fruition for me. But if I do something for someone else, it never fails. So I don't know if it's that sarcasm coming out from the Morgan and telling me that this is, something that you don't need right now, and so we're not going to let you have it, or maybe because I doubt myself too much, and I don't know what it is. But there it is. Would you write a book on your craft/spirituality? Why? If you already have, what were your challenges in doing so? Okay. As I mentioned earlier, I have published a book several years ago, I published a book called Little Bitty. It was kind of autobiographical, but it was more a book geared towards children, designed to instill a little bit of confidence in those of us that are vertically challenged. And it has been recommended to me. Timothy Roderick, when we were doing the Year in a Day series together on Facebook, mentioned to me that he thought that I should eventually write a book about my journey, that he felt a lot of people could learn a lot about themselves or take courage, because I've been through a lot in my lifetime spiritually, and I've studied a lot of other things, and that kind of thing. I've toyed with it. I've kind of started a book a long time ago, like right around the time that I wrote Little Bitty. I started a book about 5 years ago on my spiritual journey, and I just kind of threw my hands up with it because I didn't like where it was going, and I didn't like how it was sounding, and it wasn't flowing. For me, when I write something, it flows. It's that way with my PhD writings too, like when I have to write articles and things like that, papers for class. I don't ever do an outline. Outlines for me are useless, so I hate having to do them, because what I usually do is write the entire paper and then go back and make the outline, so when everybody else is working on a final draft, I'm done. But that's because it mulls over in my head, and the outline's in my head, and when I sit down, it just flows out of my hands like magic. And I didn't like the way that this book was coming out. It sounded stilted and, what have you. I am currently working on a book with another witch from England. We've been working on this book for probably about 1.5 to 2 years now. But I've had to set aside the writing. We're going back and forth with it. And I haven't had a chance to really add to my section yet and send it back to her for her response. But it is about the spiritual journey and, moving its way through the craft and so forth, and kind of our personal challenges. My challenges in writing a book like that are just that, like I said, it doesn't seem to flow for me. I don't know if it's that I feel uncomfortable talking about my own journey. I don't when I'm on a video. I've talked about my personal journey before. I don't really know how to describe what it is. Honestly, it just is one of those things where when the inspiration will strike me, I will sit down, and once that first kind of key phrase is in my head, the rest will come out, and at that point, the book will be written. It's mulling. It's in that outline stage, but it's been there for like 5 years. So I also have a book on shadow work that I'm working on, that because I had a bad experience with another witch. She was pretty nasty. And I decided, it ended up with, basically being told that I needed to do some deep shadow work. And although I still say, what a fucking bitch, part of that was true. Because I realized that although what was central to what was going on between me and her really was my feelings towards someone else, I realized that was probably true. I needed to find out what my issue was and why it was such an issue for me. And so I started doing a lot of shadow work. I got a book from Timothy Roderick and did some journaling with it and some travel. And I did some shadow work with the Spirit Keeper's Tarot. And like I said, it's great for that, because I often get responses that are not at all what I'm expecting, or that I don't want to hear, so to speak. But that's really kind of a challenge for me to talk about that kind of stuff as well, because I don't know how to put into words some of what my thoughts are. And so I have to wait for that moment that the first thought pops into my head, and then I have to write it down immediately, and then the rest of it just sort of flows out. So let's see. Number 6, if someone wanted to summon you to their circle, what 5 items would they need? I would say you're going to need coffee. You're definitely going to need a lot of coffee and maybe a little tea. Coffee, a glass of iced tea, some dragon's blood. Pardon me. Oh, the joys of business ownership. Start your own business, they said. It'll be fun, they said. Okay, so 5 things needed to summon me to your circle. I'll need a glass of iced tea, preferably Bill Miller iced tea. I will need coffee for sure. It might be a good idea to include some chocolate. I would love some dragon's blood. And the final thing would be bones. And I say that because I relate bones or crow feathers to the Morrigan. So being a battle goddess and a goddess that represents both death and rebirth, I find that central to her. So one of those two items is the fifth item would be delightful. Okay. If you were a ghost, what place would you haunt? That for me is easy. That would be Cato Lake. For those of you that are not familiar with Texas, Cato Lake is the only natural lake in Texas. And it's kind of weird because it spans both Louisiana and Texas. All of the other lakes in Texas are man-made. So Lake Louisville, Lake Ray Roberts, Lake Hubbard, Lake Lavon, all of those, Canyon Lake, they're all man-made lakes. The only natural lake is Cato Lake in East Texas, and it's on the border of Louisiana. And the lake spans across Louisiana and Texas. But the weird thing is when you go on the Louisiana side, it looks like any other lake. When you are on the Texas side, there are so many different cypress trees. It's actually easy to get lost if you're boating on the lake. It's very mystical and spiritual in nature, and that would be where I would head. I'm actually hoping to retire to that area. All right, what is the funniest way someone has reacted to finding out you're a witch? Well, let me think on this, because the reaction's been very varied. I think that probably the biggest, funniest one has been, you get that response and it's hilarious. It's like, you know, but honestly, I haven't had too many negative reactions to it. I get a lot more curiosity, and I don't know if it's because right now witchcraft seems very trendy to a lot of people, and so a lot of people are asking more questions or looking more into it, or people are just more open-minded. But I get a lot of people that go, oh, well, you know, what all does that entail? What does that mean? You know, like, do you curse people? You know, I get that question a lot. The answer would be, if I think it's necessary, hells to the yeah, I'm going to do it. But usually there are better ways to handle a situation. So there are other ways in which I can employ my magical energy that don't require that sort of thing. So, you know, but yeah, that jumping back one was probably the best response I ever got. Number 9, do you have any superstitions? If you mean superstitions by like knocking on wood or, you know, throwing salt over your shoulder, I always do things like that, but I think it's more out of habit because, you know, I was always told about those things growing up, and, you know, I don't consider my parents overly superstitious people, but we were told these things. So I do that, you know, I'll say, oh, knock on wood, you know, I hope that this doesn't do that. I don't consider myself a particularly superstitious person, but I do have routines or traditions that I follow when preparing for certain things or doing certain things. Number 10, if you could possess any fantasy magic, what would your power be? Oh, this is a fun one. Telekinesis, because I'm lazy as shit once I get home. I work very hard during the day, and I hate having to do a full day of working, then after coming home from, you know, after finishing up a long day of working with clients in which you have to be happy and cheerful the entire time, even if you don't feel like it because you have a headache or a migraine or something's going on or you're not feeling well or you're in a bad place or whatever, you cannot let that show. You're working with these people, and then you've got to go grocery shopping. And dealing with any grocery store at the end of the day is no bueno for me, and especially if it's, I've got to stop at Walmart because there's certain things I need that maybe Kroger isn't going to have. Oh, heaven help me, I freaking hate going to Walmart. I avoid that place like the plague if I can help it. The problem is, a lot of times it's very convenient. What I need, I know I can find it there, so that's where I got to go, and there's one right on the way to my house. So, yeah. in terms of once I get home, there's usually either A, I can't reach anybody who is home, or B, no one is home. And so not only do I have to lug in all my materials from work, which I have a big rolly bag that's got like my paperwork and iPads and everything I need to do my work with it inside, but I now have to also carry groceries. And I'm one of those people that I'm like, I'm going to make it in one trip or less kind of, person. So I'm like the one walking in with all the bags on the arm. I have bruises consistently on my arms from carrying in heavy bags of groceries just because I hate making multiple trips back and forth and back and forth. When I am home, I want to take off my bra and my shoes, and I want to sit my happy fat ass down, and I want to relax for a few minutes and just detox from my day. And so I hate having to carry all that stuff and make super trips. So if I could just telekinesis that shit into the house, that would be a blessing. I don't want to be able to read minds or anything like that because I found that I probably do not want to know what anybody else is thinking. And sometimes I can hear it anyway, so yeah. All right. What is something random on your altars? Well, on my Morrigan altar, I have some death oil. It's been sitting there for a while. I've got some shell casings from the last time I went to the range, and a couple of bullets that I've given as an offering. On the Canunos altar, I have some cotton that I picked from the field across the street. Character building summers. Thanks, grandmother. We used to have corn in these fields around here, and for some weird reason, they planted cotton and never harvested it. So I went out and plucked off some pods of cotton, and I took the whole pod because, I had to pick cotton as a kid for an entire summer. And those little things, they're sharp and they poke you and you bleed. So I just popped the whole top off and brought it in. And you can probably see it sitting right up there. That's this right here, folks. My office is a mess right now, so I'm going to have to part the shorts and the shirt. This right here is cotton. And I just have that kind of sitting there. That's kind of random. But I do find that it's great for absorbing negative energy. So, fabulous. All right. If one of the YouTubers you watched was a genie, and they would grant you 3 wishes in their power, who would it be and what wishes? Can't be for more wishes. Well, I wouldn't want more wishes. And, I've seen Wishmaster, so this is a tricky question. It's hard for me to say because the things I wish for are things that are completely, absolutely unattainable. Like, for example, I would wish that people could just stop being dumbasses and just learn to be at peace with one another. That kind of thing. I get so tired. It wears on me physically, the politics of the world today. And just how deep entrenched in their ideals that people get on every side, that they can't stop and take a moment to consider the perspectives of the others around them, whether you agree with it or not. And it seems to me like people have become so militant about a lot of their political beliefs on both sides of the spectrum that nobody looks for compromise anymore. And to me, it's toxic and it's poisonous, and I hate it. I absolutely hate it. So, an end to political infighting would be great. Another thing I would wish for would be that people could, I don't even know how to phrase it. I mean, it all kind of goes back to that same thing that people just can't seem to get along and appreciate ourselves for the differences that we have. So wishing for that, I mean, I honestly, I think if that was the wish I was to have, I'd probably be at maybe term limits on Congress. That one will be attainable. And for people to have what they need to survive. I wish that we could wish away evil in people's minds and hearts, because I think that would solve a lot of what's going on. But I guess those would be the 3 things I wish for. As far as who I would wish it from, there's so many good wishes out there that I admire, that I respect, that, Kellyanne Maddox, Joy Morris, Lady Grave Dancer, so many that it would be hard to say. Maybe I could have a wish from each one. I don't know. That's kind of an odd question. All right, number 13. If you could instantly become an expert in any part of your craft or spirituality, what would it be? I guess astrology, because I really don't have as good a grasp on that as I feel I should. And although I'm studying it, been studying it for a while, and there's just so many nuances. And as Joey pointed out in her video, it seems a lot like mathematics, and math just shuts my brain down. I have this absolute fear of math that's really kind of ridiculous. But to be frank with you, I didn't even realize until college that multiplication was a fast way of adding and division was a fast way of subtracting. Because they just didn't teach it that way. They would give you this list and say, we're having a time test on Tuesday, memorize this chart. And I couldn't figure out where the numbers were coming from. It didn't occur to me that three times is 9, so 3 times 3 is 9. If somebody would have just pointed that out, maybe I'd be better at it. But astrology smacks to me of a lot of measurements and angles and mathematics and degrees and this kind of thing, and it just freaks me the fuck out. So that would be kind of one of those things. I would like to understand it better because I think I could understand myself better. Now, when you die, what do you think will happen to your soul? Okay, I've talked about this before in previous videos. My opinion is that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, right? Our bodies operate on electricity and on energy, and energy is everywhere around us. So I think that when you die, that's not the end of you. I don't know that there's necessarily an afterlife in terms of all of your energetic form is reincarnated in something else. Maybe bits of your energy goes here, there, and everywhere. So I do believe that the soul reconnects to deity for a time in the Summerland, where it rests and imparts what it has learned during the current incarnation, and then is perhaps recycled, not necessarily as a whole, but bits and pieces. And you go out to learn other lessons through other incarnations, because like it or not, my experience on this plane is not the same as yours or anybody else's. So I think we have a lot to learn from each other and through that kind of thing. So that's, it's kind of complicated. I don't think that we really know. But that's my personal belief from things that I've studied and looking at science and technology and people's past life experiences and things like that. Again, I don't think that the soul is reincarnated as a whole as it is. Like my soul as it is right now, I don't think is just going to get put into another body. I think that we rest, reconnect with our spirit guides and deities and that sort of thing. We pass on the lessons that we've learned as this incarnation and the things that we've learned about ourselves, because what is your soul exactly? Well, it's an individuated expression of the divine, right? So if you are wanting to learn about yourself, you're going to have to reconnect and figure out what those lessons are to put the pieces together, right? Question 15, the last question. Where do you see yourself spiritually in the next 5 years? Oh, honey, I can't even see myself spiritually tomorrow, much less in the next 5 years. Truth be told, I've become very dissatisfied with my life the way it is. I don't feel very fulfilled. I don't feel very happy. I've had to step away from making videos, which I love. We took a really long break with Witches in the Moon. We're off into Letha, which is quickly approaching, and I really don't feel prepared for that. I have to finish my PhD coursework this year, or I lose everything that I've worked towards. I've got 3 classes, but my mentor has sucked ass, and she never submitted my degree plan to the graduate school, so I'm trying to get all that crap taken care of. And it seems like every time I feel like I'm getting a chance to work on myself spiritually, I suddenly get so busy with my business, my business that pays our bills and keeps this roof over our heads and gives me the internet to be able to do these videos, that I don't even know how to figure out where I am spiritually now, much less where I'm going to be in 5 years. Where I would like to see myself is moving more into a more satisfied position of sharing my spirituality and the things that I've learned with others so that they may grow, and taking a real leadership role in the witchy community, because we have lost a lot of really good authors and leaders in the community in the last couple of years. And I'm going to do a video on that shortly. I'm really running out of time because I've got to go to work and see some clients today, but I had one that canceled, so I was able to get this one in, and I wanted to go ahead and do that. But I'm going to try to do another short video and then get both of these uploaded this evening. But I do feel that it's I'm not happy where I am. So spiritually, I would like to be much more satisfied with my life and with myself as I am, in terms of who I am as a person and who I am as a witch and who I am as a mother and a wife and just a human being, and be far more grounded and moving towards goals that I have set for myself. I've always been a goal setter, and spiritually, my goal is to get to a point where I feel that I'm well adjusted enough to start helping others to move forward in their journeys as well, because I like to teach, I like to guide, I like to share my experiences with others in the hopes that they may gain something from it. And so 5 years from now, that's really where I'd like to be. So that's the Get to Know Your Witches tag. If you're interested, I'll have the questions in the down bar. I would love to see you guys. I'd love to tag Sunshine Morning Ray, but I don't know that she'll do it. And I would love to tag Lady Grave Dancer. But also anyone who's watching this video that wants to share their witchy selves, please join in and let us know where you stand. Thanks so much, and thank you for your patience. Have a wonderful day.